So Pastor Kevin asked me to talk about mental health tonight, and so we changed the format a little bit. Aaron and I were going to lead you in a battle-ready session, and he said, I think this is an important conversation that our community needs to have. And I don't have a lot of background of where you are and what's going on in your life, and or how your own society and culture relates to mental health. But in Los Angeles, we have an epidemic that has taken place. And it's a very peculiar time in history. Because at least in our context, we have a level of freedom that humanity has almost never known. We can decide where we want to work and where we want to eat and what we want to dress. And every single day we live in an environment where the level of freedom is beyond the imagination of most people in the world. And no time in history has ever known this kind of freedom and opportunity. And even as I'm here in this place, I meet so many entrepreneurs, and so many of you are so incredibly creative and inventive. And here in KL, it feels as if you have incredible opportunity here. But at the same time that there's this unprecedented amount of freedom, there's an almost unexplainable amount of depression. There's an unexplainable amount of emotional crisis and emotional unhealth. Well, Los Angeles has an epidemic of depression. We have a culture that's constantly stressed out. It's become normative for people to have panic attacks and to have emotional breakdowns. And in fact, in our environment, we seem to have an epidemic of suicide. And I personally have had so many people I've loved who I've known over the years end their lives. And just a few months ago, I did the funeral for a young artist who killed himself at the age of 17. Incredibly famous through the internet and through YouTube, a massive fan following. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people filled our church building for his funeral, and over 1,000 people joined watching through the internet. And they even celebrated his life in different cities because of his influence. And yet at 17, he couldn't think of one reason to live one more day. And so I don't know what the level of challenge or difficulty is in this environment, but it seems that we have a global epidemic. And we're not talking about 45-year-old businessmen who are stressed out because they're working 7-figure jobs trying to figure out how to overtake a new market. We're talking about 15-year-old kids who feel overwhelmed by life. 23-year-olds who are struggling with panic attacks. And I wonder how many of you here would be honest enough to say, this is me. And then in the church, inside of the space of our faith, it can actually become more difficult. Because if you believe in Jesus, you're not supposed to have these problems, right? If you believe in Jesus, you're not ever supposed to be depressed. If you believe in Jesus, you're never supposed to be stressed out. And if you risk it, and I've learned really quickly that a part of Malaysian culture is don't ask questions. Yes? No? Yes. And so it seems like you're warm and friendly and kind, but also incredibly guarded and protected and hidden. And you have things inside of you that no one knows is going on. And if you took a little bit of a risk and said to someone, I'm struggling, and if they were spiritual, they would look at you and say, well, you just need to read the Bible, or you just need to pray. Or they might be more specific and give you a verse. Well, God will give you perfect peace, or Jesus is your Prince of Peace, or be anxious for nothing. And we keep going back to the same verses as if somehow the verses were magical. And if you just memorized the verse and said it enough times and tapped your heels, then you would no longer be depressed. And so we don't talk about it because we act as if mental health is not a reality. And so it becomes a taboo. And so part of the problem is that if you are a person of faith and you come into a space like this, you come to church, but you cannot deal with the real issues you're dealing with, you're going to eventually convince yourself that Jesus cannot fix you. He cannot help you. He's not what you're searching for. He's not what you need. And you're going to have to try to find a solution to the deep problems of your life somewhere else. And so at the very least, what we have to do is open up a conversation and say, it's okay to talk about this. And it's okay to struggle with stuff like this. It's okay to live in this tension of believing completely in Jesus and still feeling like you're a mess. There's this one particular moment in the scriptures that really struck me when I was thinking about mental health. Now, there's several, but this one really did strike me because it happened to a person that I think it shouldn't have happened to. It happened to someone whose life was on a roll, and if anything, he's like a hero. I love superheroes. My wife hates every movie about superheroes. She will not watch anything. But then she loves Shazam. I cannot figure that out. But my wife was a foster child, and so she loved it. It's a story about foster children, and so she's watched it multiple times. I'm like, how could I have known Shazam would be like your jam, that Shazam would be your thing? I can't even get her to watch. I said, what about Captain Marvel? And I said, hey, let's go watch Batman. That's never going to happen. And she's never going to watch Avengers. She's never going to see an X-Men. My wife is not going to go see Spider-Man. It's not going to happen, but I love all those heroes. And a huge part of that is because it provokes in me my own aspirational longing to be heroic. How about you? But in the Bible, there's someone who was X-Men before X-Men, who was Thor before Thor, who was Superman before Superman. His name is Elijah. I mean, Elijah is kind of epic if you think about who he was. He prays and he calls fire down from heaven. That's kind of like awesome, right? That's like DC, right? And Elijah, he prays, it doesn't rain for 3.5 years. It's marvel. This guy is extraordinary. And he has this peak moment. You know it's in 1 Kings chapter 18. And this is the moment where all the people were turning away from the living God. So he says, all right, to all the false prophets, almost 1,000 of them, you build an altar, I'll build an altar. You pray to your gods, I'll pray to my God. And whoever God is really God, they'll send fire down from heaven. Everybody said, that's a great idea. And that's a great way to figure out who God is, right? Fire comes down from heaven. And next week, that will be Pastor Kevin's job. And bring the fire down from heaven. I'm just going to build the altar. And that's what happens in the story. So all the prophets of Baal and Balak, they just cried out to their gods, but they did not answer. And they cut themselves because that was what their religion required of them. And they were self-destructive. And Elijah was just mocking them, saying, hey, maybe your God can't hear you. Maybe you should pray louder. Or there's actually a moment when he says, maybe your God's like indisposed. Like, maybe your God's got diarrhea. That's really what he's saying. It's like, it's a terrible thing when you need your God. And he's like, oh, I'm not available right now. Can you leave me alone? And he's just mocking them. And of course, nothing ever happens. And when it's his turn, he has to be dramatic. And so he says, just drench it. So they drench the altar 7 times. And then he prays this really simple prayer. God, you got this. Boom, fire comes down. You know the story. It says that it consumed not only all the water, but that altar, the other altar, and a few of the false prophets. Well, details. And after this moment, you would think Elijah would be set for life. Have you ever struggled and you thought to yourself, God, if you would just do one miracle, I would never doubt you? You ever had that? Or God, just answer this prayer, this one prayer, and I'll never ask you for anything ever again. You ever prayed that one? Yeah. God, just let her go out with me. And that's all I'm going to ask you, God. Or God, just give me that promotion. Or God, just give me that job. Or God, just let this lane drive faster. That one prayer, God, just need a miracle. But you know what's really crazy is that Elijah has the greatest miracle that you could ever imagine. Fire coming down from heaven. And then right after that, his world turns upside down. So I want you to see what happens right after. It says in chapter 19 of 1 Kings, beginning verse 1, it says, now Ahab told Jezebel, and I don't know if you know who Ahab and Jezebel are, most of you, right? And you know they're bad people. You know how you know they're bad people? Nobody names their kids that, all right? Anybody here named Jezebel? Okay, you see? Bad person, all right? And so it says that they were the king and queen. So Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, may the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of them. So Jezebel sends a messenger to threaten Elijah. Now, if I'm Elijah and I get a message from a messenger and some woman says to me, I'm going to kill you, I will bring it on, woman. I just brought fire down from heaven. I am Elijah, fire caller. That's who I am. That's my superpower. I got other powers, but that's the one I'm working on right now. That's the power of the month. So if you want to come after me, woman, get ready because you're going to be barbecue. Right? I guess you could have a different option, but you think he would not be afraid, but it says that when she sends this message, it says, and Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. Which lets you know right away that fear is usually rooted in something that's not real. Because if he could stand against 950 false prophets, why is he running when one woman is threatening his life? See, most of our emotional distress is not rooted, in fact, I'd say all of it. It's not rooted in what's real. Fear is a negative projection of the future. Just like faith is a positive projection of the future. And so he's afraid, so he runs for his life, and he came to Beersheba in Judah, where he left his servant. And while he himself went on a day's journey into the wilderness, and by the way, this is not incidental, that Elijah is now going to go through his own personal wilderness, and so he runs into the wilderness. You know what I find it's odd? You will construct a world that matches your soul. Let me say that again, because I don't think you got it. You will construct a world that matches your soul. So Elijah was in a desert in his soul, so he ran to the desert. Elijah felt alone in the world, so he left the servant behind and he made sure he was alone. What's really odd is the very things we fear are usually the things we create. And so he runs into the wilderness, he comes to a broom bush, sat under it, and prayed that he might die. Now, I think it's odd that we never talk about this. See, I'm convinced that there are people here right now that have struggled with suicidal thoughts. There's some of you here, you've had this inner voice that just told you, just end it. What's the point? It's not worth the struggle. And we never talk about these, and we actually act as if they don't exist, but I want you to hear me for a moment. Elijah, the prophet of God, the man who called fire down from heaven, begged God that he would die. And we need to take a moment and recognize that your success does not make you immune to feeling like a failure. This is the moment of Elijah's greatest success and his moment of greatest despair. And the internal crisis of depression is not rooted in how successful or unsuccessful you are. It's a strange darkness that takes us over. And when you're successful, I'm convinced, is actually when you're most vulnerable. Because when you achieve success and it doesn't fill the need of your soul, when you achieve something, when you accomplish something, when you finally arrived and you still feel this emptiness inside, you have this overwhelming fear that nothing but nothing will ever fix what's broken inside of you. And so he asked God to kill him. I've had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. Now, I have a theory here. One, aren't you glad God doesn't answer all your prayers yes? Because this could have been a really short story. God killed me. Okay. And then there's Elisha. Right? I could just move on. See, I'm glad that God does not answer the prayers we ask out of our despair, out of our depression, out of our fear, out of our inadequacy, because most of those prayers are not the right prayers. And I don't even think his prayer was that sincere. In fact, I think his prayer was insincere. You ever prayed something you really didn't want? Or maybe later you realize you didn't want it? I mean, some of you became angry at God because he didn't marry you. You got angry at God because he didn't hire you. You got angry at God because she didn't say yes to you. She said yes to your best friend. He's no longer your best friend, but that's a different story. And you asked God for something and God did not give it to you. You've been angry with God, and you need to realize you should be thanking God he did not give you what he did not give you. Because here Elijah prays and says, God, kill me, and God doesn't kill him. But this is why I think it's insincere, okay? He's over here saying, God, kill me. But over here, he got a message from Jezebel, I'm coming to kill you. So he runs for his life. Now, if I were God, I'd go, I got this. You want me to kill you? Just go back. Jezebel's ready. I already answered that prayer before you even asked it. Just a little side note. And then he lays down and he falls asleep. And all at once an angel touched him and said, get up and eat. And he looked around, and there by his head there was some bread, hot coals, and a jar of water. Now, I think it's interesting that he's absolutely overwhelmed by life. He's stressed out. He's having a panic attack. He's depressed. He feels overwhelmed by life. He wants to end his life. You cannot get in a worse situation. And you know what he does? He goes to sleep. What do you do when you're stressed out? How many would be honest and say, when I feel stressed, I go to sleep? Anybody? Wow. That's a Malaysian response to stress. How do you say, when I'm stressed out, before I go to sleep, I eat? Anybody? Stress eating? Oh, wow, okay. How many go, when I'm stressed out, I can't eat? It's stress starvation, okay? How many go, I both eat and don't eat? I do them both. Yeah, see, because I'm that guy. Like, you know, it's crazy. When I wrote The Way of the Warrior, and here I wrote this book about how to deal with depression and anxiety and stress and how to get past all that and work your way through and all these codes of the warrior. And the day the book came out, I can't explain. I was in New York, and I had like this irrational panic attack. I did. And I called my wife. I said, I don't know what's wrong. You ever just feel like something's going to go bad? You ever have that thought? I was like, something's going to go bad. My world's going to fall upside down. I did something wrong, but I don't even know what I did. I just know everything's going to collapse. What's wrong? What's wrong? I don't know. I wrote a book called The Way of the Warrior about how to find inner peace, and I don't have any inner peace. This is all sort of a divine comedy. And I was like just really overwhelmed. And in the middle of all that, I flew home, and I said, honey, let's go get pizza. So she knew I was stressed out. Because I went and got pizza. And I ordered this giant pizza, and she said, how many people are joining us? I said, just you and me, don't judge me. And she had like a slice, and I ate the whole pizza. That's why I'm wearing baggy clothes, because I'm still carrying that pizza and several other pizzas to follow. And then right after that pizza, I said, hey, honey, let's go next door and get ice cream. And she goes, what? You want ice cream? I said, yeah, let's get some ice cream. So we went and got some ice cream. Later on, I started seeing in my mind this pink box, because in LA, they put donuts in pink boxes. And I thought, we could go get some donuts too. And so I was doing like I stress eat and starve. I eat all the wrong things and don't eat all the right things. And I can't sleep. I'm not a stress sleeper. I'm a stress insomniac. So I can't sleep for days, but at least I have pizza. And Elijah goes to sleep, and it says an angel touched him. Now, if I were an angel, if I were God, and I looked at Elijah, I just answered your prayer. I sent fire from heaven. And now Jezebel's threatening you. You're running for your life. You're whining like a baby. And I wouldn't touch him. I would touch him. Right? It's like I would be the angel. Bam! Get up, you whiny hipster. Stop acting like your life is so stressful. It's like, just get your butt up. But God doesn't do that. Just we do that to each other. Right? You know what God does? It says God caressed him and said, get up and eat. And this is so awesome. God's chefing. Anybody watch Chef's Table? I love Chef's Table. Could you imagine having God cook you a meal? It says, he looked around, and there by his head was some baked bread cooked over hot coals in a jar of water. God cooked baked bread over coals. Now, stay with me. Bread over hot coals, stretched out, a little marinara sauce, a little mozzarella cheese. It's pizza. It's pizza. It's like and by the way, it doesn't happen just once. It says that God cooked him some food, and he ate and he drank and he went back to sleep. And the angel of the Lord came back a second time, and this time he just grabbed him and slapped him around. He said, get up! No, it doesn't. He says he just caresses him and says, get up and eat. So he feeds him a second time. So I'm thinking, okay, still the hot bread theme. Hot bread, circular with a little hole in the middle, a little glaze, it's divine donuts. And I got some donuts here. And don't let anybody shame you when God uses carbs to bring you back. And, but here's the serious point. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do for someone is to feed them. Just to help them get physically healthy again. Just to help them feel human again. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is not, hey, you need to read your Bible, let's have a prayer meeting, or, come to church and we're going to lay hands on you for the next 3 hours so that you can get out of this depression. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is go to their house, push open the curtains, say, take a shower, we're going to go get some of your favorite food, and we're going to just enjoy life a little. Because I found there's certain things that become mutually exclusive. You can't appreciate beauty and be filled with violence. You can't be experiencing the fullness of joy and be drowning in the depths of despair. You have to get yourself up and to begin to see the beauty all around you and begin to enjoy life. Sometimes we so over-spiritualize everything that we miss the early steps to health. The first steps to get yourself back to health is to start enjoying life. God created this life for your pleasure, for you to enjoy it. And I think the church sometimes has done a disservice because we act like joy is unspiritual. We act as if laughter is not spiritual. We act as if celebration is not spiritual unless you're celebrating in church. But God sends an angel to cook for him and to help him find his strength. And then he says to him, eat, for the journey is too much for you. I just want to highlight a couple things. One, success is not the cure for depression. Some of you think if you can just get enough success, you finally won't feel bad about yourself. But when your identity is rooted in your success, it's rooted in quicksand. And some of you, I'm going to just project, are subconsciously still trying to earn your parents' approval and your parents' love. And no matter how much you do, you can't seem to find the key to unlock their affection and their praise. And you're being tormented because you've never felt that you were loved or seen or known. And it will hold you hostage the rest of your life. You have to let it go. You have to realize your identity cannot be rooted in anyone else's approval or affection except for Jesus's. And he already approves of you. He already accepts you just the way you are. Do not work for love. Work from love. Secondly, I want you to see that feelings of emptiness are not proof of the absence of God. Feelings of emptiness are not proof of the absence of God. Have you ever just felt really alone? Anyone? And when you feel really alone, what people who are really well-meaning will say to you, you just need to get closer to Jesus. But when you feel alone, you don't feel closeness to anyone. It's an odd kind of thing. And I'm going to just share with you personally. See, I'm not talking to you from a theoretical perspective. I'm not talking to you simply as a lecturer or educator. I'm talking to you as a human who's had to deal with deep personal brokenness in my own life. By the time I was 12 years old, I was in a psychiatric chair. That same year, I was in and out of a hospital for what I was told was psychosomatic illnesses. For years of my life, as early as I can remember, I would have every single night such severe nightmares that I would wake up and the nightmares were still there. And I came to Jesus at 20, and it didn't stop at 20. That my nightmares were so severe and so intense that even as an adult, my family has had to deal with my internal turmoil. I would sleep in hotel rooms with my door jarred open because my nightmares were so violent, they were life-threatening. And I wanted to make sure someone could find me in that hotel if something happened to me. There are so many times my wife would try to wake me, but I was already awake, but the nightmares were just so vivid. My kids can tell you how many times they were awakened in the middle of the night because I was living out that nightmare, fully awake. And I want you to understand that I'm not talking to you from an idea. And there were times in my life, and I think they're rooted in some brokenness when I was young, where I just feel a complete disconnection from everything around me. And I feel an overwhelming sense of aloneness. And it took me years, probably 25 years of marriage before I was able to just finally talk to my wife about it. And one of the things that helped me so much is I would just call her sometimes. I'd say, hey, honey, I just need to tell you, I feel like I'm drifting. I feel like I'm alone in this world, and I'm overwhelmed by a deep sense of loneliness. And she'll just try to talk me back. And I call her, and I tell myself, I know it's not rooted in something that's real. It's rooted in something in my past that overwhelms me, and it just begins to swallow me, and I have to fight my way out. And some days you feel like you're suffocating and just trying to breathe. And one of the things I had to learn in my life is those feelings of aloneness are not proof of the absence of God. I have to sit in the reality of God's presence. I know that God is with me. That I'm not alone even when I feel alone. But here's the crazy thing. When you feel this deep sense of aloneness, don't be a self-fulfilling prophecy and disconnect yourself from people and be alone. The crazy thing is I would always do the very thing I was afraid of. I would disconnect myself from people. I would pull myself away. I would isolate myself, and I would prove I was alone because I made sure I was alone. And so in those moments you start drifting, what you need to do is you need to swim upstream and get into community. You need to press yourself toward people. The moments you feel like, oh, there's nobody who loves me, you need to push in and love people. See, instead of going, no one loves me, nobody cares about me, there's no one here for me, because that's what your internal world will tell you. You need to flip it and say, okay, if no one's here for me, if no one loves me, if no one cares about me, that doesn't stop me from loving people and caring about people and being there for people. So I'm going to be a part of the solution rather than look for someone to be my solution. So you need to look for someone who needs to be loved. You need to look for people who need someone who cares for them. You need to be present for people. And what's amazing is the moment you take your focus off of your own disconnection and start serving other people, you start getting connected without even realizing it. Never forget that you do not simply need Jesus. You need people. Because God created you like that. It was God who said, look, did Adam have any needs in the garden? See, we have this idea that before the fall, we didn't have any needs, right? But then we fell and now we have all these needs. But no, in the garden, Adam had needs. That's why when we sing, God, you're all I need, not really. I know we sing that, but it's not really true. Because, okay, you're here, you say, God is all I need. Anybody? Right now, stop breathing. And don't inhale. Hold true to your convictions. Don't inhale until you say, okay, maybe I need to breathe. Maybe I need to breathe. And God, you're all I need and oxygen. But then eventually, guess what? You're going to need to eat. And eventually, you're going to need to sleep. And eventually, you're going to need to drink something. You know why? Because God designed you to need things. Oh, and by the way, it says, and God looked at man and saw that it was not good for him to be alone. So guess what? In the garden, man needed woman. Remember, where's the all we need is God? Where's the, well, in the garden, we didn't need anything except for God. No. Because God is not a narcissist where he designed us where we only need him. He actually created us to love each other, to need each other. It was not good for man to be alone. It wasn't Adam going, okay, I got this great garden. This is awesome. Got all the fruit I need. No durian. This is still before the fall. And, all right. And Adam is like, oh, look at all the animals. I'm having a great time. But he didn't go, hey, God. Because God has Adam name all the animals, which I think is like, was an object lesson. Adam named all the animals. Okay, 2 horses, 2 elephants, 2 antelopes, 1 human. Oh. 2 hippopotamus, 2 crocodile, 2 rabbits, 2,000 rabbits, okay? And, sorry. 1 human. See, God had him naming all the animals before he created Eve. And he realized that all the animals had community, but not humanity. Because humanity didn't exist. There was just one human. And it's almost as if God's saying, okay, Adam, anything you want to ask me for? No. Sure, you sure? Look, keep naming all the animals. Anything you want to ask me for? Can't think of anything. Okay, keep naming all the animals. Anything you want to ask me for. Remember, it's a man. I just want to give him the benefit of the doubt. It's like, and because I think if it had been Eve, she says, yeah, I'm here alone. I need someone to open the bottle. Right? But he doesn't get it, so God puts him to sleep. It's almost like God said, it's okay, Adam. Just go to sleep. I got you. Yeah. And then God pulls the woman out when he wakes up. He's like, oh, that's what was missing. I knew something was missing, but I didn't know what it was, And then, of course, he looks at her and says, I'm not sure if you're the one. But as all guys do, right? And here's the beautiful thing. In perfect conditions, man still needed woman. In perfect conditions, humans still needed community. In perfect conditions, we still need each other. There is no condition, there's no level of spirituality you will ever attain where you will not need people. And so much of our emotional lack of health is that we keep trying to create a spirituality that makes human relationships obsolete. Your emotional health will only be found in community. This is where we get healed. This is where we get better. This is where we grow. Let me just wrap up these thoughts. And God says to Elijah, eat, for the journey is too much for you. It's kind of beautiful. He says there's still a journey. You don't want a journey, you just want to sleep. You don't want to go anywhere, but you're going to go somewhere. So eat, get up, and go. This is kind of funny. I don't know the exact words, but we were having dinner last night and with our friend Brian. And so we're eating all this food, and afterwards I hear this world-class burnt cheesecake. And so Pastor Kevin ordered 2 pieces of burnt cheesecake for the table to share. And I said, well, no, order 3 because I'm not sharing. And I'm a giver, but not a sharer. So I'll give it to you, but I'm not going to share. I'm going to eat my piece. And I love cheesecake. And so we're eating, and I eat my cheesecake. My son takes a little piece, but I don't say anything because I'm generous. And and after we're all so full and we're leaving, I said, hey, why don't we walk back to the hotel? And he's like, no, we should get a car. And I said, well, let's walk. And then Brian goes, I can't walk. Then I'll waste all this food I've eaten. I thought, I've never heard anybody say that. It's it's perfect. And Elijah got fed twice by God. And I think he was having a Brian moment. I just got to go back to sleep. I don't want to waste all this food I've eaten. And God's like, no, I'm feeding you because I'm also leading you. And if you're not letting God lead you, but you're expecting God to feed you, you're just going to get fat and unhealthy. And he says, eat because the journey is too much for you. And by the way, that should be both encouraging and discouraging. He's saying the journey is too much for you. God's like, I'm going to tell you the truth. Yeah, I've seen your future and it's looking hard. You're running from Jezebel. You don't even know what's coming. Yeah, it's God just showed me the future. He's like, you don't want to know. You don't want to know. Look, there's a reason God's not telling you everything. You cannot handle everything your future has coming your way. But here's the good news. Your future is bigger than you. He said your journey is too much for you. Why would you ever think God would call you on a journey that was too little for you? That would be so diminishing and demeaning for God to go, don't worry, I've assessed who you are. I'm going to give you a really small journey. He's like, you're only going to go from here to here. Like, all you got to do is cross the street. Don't worry, I got you. You ain't much. I'm not calling you to too much. God's like saying, no, your journey's too much for you. Whatever life God has for you is too much for you. Whatever life God has for you is too big for you. Whatever life God has for you is going to call out of you everything you have, and there's still going to be a deficit, because that deficit is a space where God meets you and proves himself to be your God. So just summarizing, success will not immune you from failure. Feelings of emptiness are not proof that God is not present. And your lows will not only come right after your highs, they may come at the same time as your highs. Your highs and your lows can happen at the same time. You can be full of faith and full of fear at the same time. It's crazy. I know we're not supposed to say that, but that's the reality. Because when you're afraid, that's when you have to be filled with faith. I have friends who are atheists who tell me, I just don't believe in faith. I don't live by faith. I can't just accept this whole faith idea. And I'll tell them, well, are you ever afraid? Do you ever have fear? And they go, well, of course, everybody has fear. I go, well, fear is just faith in the most negative future. So if you're already living by faith using fear, why not live by faith using hope? And so everyone lives by faith. Some people just only live with a negative view of faith. You have a worst case scenario about your future. And so what you need to realize is when you're struggling with anxiety, when you're having panic attacks, when you're feeling discouraged, when you're feeling depressed, what's actually happening is your soul is letting you know that the life you're living right now doesn't match the frequency of the life you long for. Because here's a really interesting little insight. You cannot be depressed unless you can imagine a better life, a better you, or a better future. My dog has no ambition. My dog is a Labrador retriever who lives her life like a rug. She sleeps, she eats, she poops. And that's all she does. And my wife was worried about her. I said, honey, that's what dogs do. They don't wake up in the morning with a deep sense of intention. They don't wake up in the morning going, today is going to be different. Today I'm going to be a wolf. Today I will be king. No, you're just a dog. And my dog just has never sat down with me and said, I don't feel like I'm living up to my potential. And I mean, my mom was a dog, and so was my dad. And my dad didn't even hang around, and all my brothers and sisters, they're all somewhere else. It's like I had all this identity issues, and then I look exactly like all of them, and so I don't know who I am. See, my dog just doesn't deal with all that. See, the reason you get depressed is because you can actually imagine a different you. So when you feel depressed, realize it's your soul actually telling you, don't settle for this. So instead of getting depressed when you're depressed, let that depression be the fuel for a new you. And when you feel discouraged, when you feel this, even despair, see, despair cannot exist if you can't imagine yourself somewhere else. But despair is the powerlessness that you feel when you can't get from where you are to where you long to be. See, and that's why you have to understand that Jesus changes you both instantly and progressively. Jesus changes you the moment you give your life to him, and then that change takes your entire life for it to happen. And you need to celebrate the small incremental victories of you. And you need to be around people who celebrate the small victories of your life. And those highs and lows, they'll come at the same time. You know when pastors are most vulnerable? Right after they preach. Right after you speak, you feel like dirt. Right? Right after you speak, you feel like you've let everybody down, you've humiliated yourself, and you just embarrassed yourself in front of 1,000 people, and no one's ever going to appreciate you. Everybody's going to be talking about you. You don't even know what pastors think in their heads because they're human. And those high moments, they just make you vulnerable for the low moments in your life. And that's when you're most dangerously positioned to make devastating choices. And then just one last thought. You're not alone when you feel alone. It's interesting because God sends Elijah to this cave. You know the story. And then there's fire and wind and an earthquake, and God's not in any of those, but God's in the still small voice. And then Elijah says, God, I'm all alone. There's nobody. And God says, actually, it's not true. There's lots of people waiting for you. And he goes, what? Yeah, he was like, there's just endless number of other prophets, other people who love me and will stand by your side. You just think you're alone, but you're not alone. Yeah. And so in those moments where you feel desperately alone, I just want you to know you're not alone. And I feel like what has to happen is we have to get to the place where we can be honest with each other. I don't think we need to glamorize being unhealthy. And because I don't think it's cool to be unhealthy. I think it's honest to share that you're not healthy. But I don't want you to want to stay there. I want you to become whole. I want you to move to wholeness. I want you to find hope. And I want you to know something. I'm standing in front of you right now, and I want you to know that I've been through some really, really dark moments in my life. But my life is so full of hope. I have so much joy in my life. I've learned to enjoy life. I love to laugh. I love food. I love movies. I love cities. I love people. I just love life. And you have to give yourself permission to enjoy life. And some of you have embraced a spirituality, a religion that says that God is always serious, that God doesn't care about your joy, that if you're really spiritual, you're always broken. When I was in seminary, I had this friend who always said to me, oh, God really broke me. Oh, God's really breaking me. And at first I thought, he's so holy. I even told him, you should do a conference on holiness because I've never known anyone so broken. And he said, oh, God's just breaking me. And finally one day I looked at him and I said, what's wrong with you? I said, God's always breaking you. Like, what's the deal? Why are you and God always fighting? Man, and when I was in school, I had all these pastors. It was in my master's degree, and they would come to me, and they would literally be weeping and say to me, you and God just seem to have this relationship, and I just can't find it. They'd just be sobbing because they felt so disconnected from God. And I would tell them, oh, you are so much more spiritual than me. The difference between you and me is that God brought me to himself when I was a wreck. So I'm not ever confused about why God loves me. I know that God loves me, and I've been a mess. So why should I enjoy life fully? And you may not realize this, but there's a secret to the strength that you've been searching for. Your spiritual strength will not come from how much Bible you know. Know all the Bible you can, though. Your spiritual strength will not come from prayer, though you should pray as much as you can. Your spiritual strength will not come from all your discipline or all your rituals. You know where your strength comes from? This is what the Bible says. The joy of the Lord is your strength. When you are full of joy, despair cannot overpower you.
That's right.
When you're full of joy, the stress will not overwhelm you. When you're full of joy, you will have all the strength you need to face every challenge in front of you. So my prayer for you is that this will be a community that is full of joy. and that you will have a reputation across KL. These people, they know how to enjoy life. Because when we are in Jesus, everything is ours. The world is ours. Creation is ours. Even durian is ours. It's all ours to enjoy. So why don't we enjoy the life that God has given us? Hey, God bless you guys. Love you.